The Making Sense of Place film series was made possible by the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, since 1974 providing research and training for policymakers and practitioners on the taxation, regulation, and use of land. Additional funding provided by
I was born in Portland. This is my hometown. This is my home state. I love this place.
Can I help you?
Is it different than the way other places do it? Absolutely. The people here are different because they understand that living here carries a responsibility to live in a different way, and that we want to move in a trajectory that's different than where American cities have gone in the past.
Welcome to all of you to Portland.
Every year, city officials from around the world descend on Portland, Oregon.
It looks to me, especially in the center, very much like a European city. It's very much similar to what they are doing in Barcelona.
A few years ago, the city made the decision, along with some of the private development community, to install the modern streetcar, and you're riding that line now.
For city planners like these, Portland is a kind of mecca, a city that has figured out how to manage growth. For nearly 40 years now, the people of Portland, Oregon, has set out on a course far different than the rest of America.
It's kind of a revolution in the ideas about how an American city might develop.
While many American cities have sprawled outwards and consumed the surrounding countryside, Portland has protected its rural areas by containing urban growth.
Oregon has this amazing natural beauty because Oregonians have worked very hard to keep it that way.
Portland's efforts reveal a great deal about what's at stake for all cities in the 21st century.
Most of the population of the planet is going to be living in urban areas. And it is crucially important now, and increasingly so in the future, that we really get a handle on how to make good cities that are pleasant and livable and good for people.
It's about greed, it's about people that aren't willing.
It hasn't been easy or without conflict and sacrifice. Some have even called Portland's plan a failure.
No, that's communism.
Oregon's land use system is totally broken. You know, this is a great land use experiment.
Others claim Portland to be the nation's most livable city.
Big change rarely comes about by consensus. Important advances involve a challenge to the established way of doing things.
And some have gone as far as to call Portland a model for all American cities.
There's not a one of us that doesn't kind of look around and think, wow, this is really special.
All right, it's time to hop into the next part of the process.
You know, it's a drug. Just gonna get a little bit on your spoon, spray it across your palate, make sure to just rinse the spoon between every cup.
It can take on some of the aspects of a fine wine.
Portland has always been known as an eclectic place, a place that does things its own way.
We're just trying to get in there, get the first impressions of the coffees.
It is home to a thriving coffee house culture and a young, offbeat creative community.
I think coffee is definitely a huge thing here in Portland. I don't think a lot of other cities have the benefit of having the type of coffee business that we do have. So you know you're going to get a good quality cup of coffee, and you know where the coffee's coming from. Definitely very Portland, the coffee thing here. So.
When I lived in Alabama, I was trying to figure out where to move after I graduated college. Every week you hear about a couple or a group of friends talking about moving to Portland because there's so much buzz around the nation for this city. The city really is a fantastic place to live.
With a population over 1.5 million, Portland is the biggest metropolitan region in Oregon. It is also headquarters to large corporations like Intel and Nike, and hundreds of startup companies, which are attracting professionals from all over the country. But to really understand Portland and why it's so different, it's best to start outside the city.
This is a remarkable landscape. It's one of the reasons people feel so passionate about the place. It's got a magnificent setting with snow-capped volcanoes to the east, Coast Range to the west, and this rich valley that has been cultivated for thousands of years.
It's not an accident that you can get in a car and be in an amazingly beautiful place in 20 minutes from virtually anywhere in Portland.
It is their close connection with nature and their fear of losing it that led Portland's residents to do something unheard of. They drew a line around their community. Outside this boundary, sprawl is prohibited. They call the line an urban growth boundary.
The importance of urban growth boundaries is that they're very simple and they're very clear. Inside the boundary, we have a city. That's where we want development, we want growth, we want investment. And outside of it, we have land needed for other things, for farming, for ranching, for forestry, for natural resources.
One of the things I was really delighted by as I walked the urban growth boundary was to experience the many different landscapes that the city comes right up next to.
Author David Oakes knows the urban growth boundary intimately. He has walked its entire 234-mile length.
So there'd be open fields like this, and there'd be wheat fields out by Hillsboro, and forests, and sometimes berry patches and orchards, vineyards with wineries attached to them right next to the city. It was really an illustration of one of the fundamental purposes of the urban growth boundary, which would be to have your city life and also to have your agricultural life going on in a way that you weren't going to lose in 5 years because someone decided to develop there.
The people of Portland did something else. They elected a council of fellow citizens to manage the urban growth boundary.
I've spent pretty much all my professional life trying to implement what we have and to make it better. If I thought it was perfect, I wouldn't have run for office.
Robert Liberty sits on Metro, a groundbreaking form of regional government. Greater Portland is composed of 25 different towns. If this region were like the rest of the country, each one of these towns would make its own zoning decisions. In Portland, however, one council, Metro, oversees the entire metropolitan area. So, instead of having a patchwork of 25 different policies, the region has a single coherent plan.
To me, it's just common sense. How else would you govern except at the way that we've settled, which is in metropolitan regions? The reality is that we're organized around metropolitan areas, and our democratic institutions ought to reflect that.
One of Metro's jobs is to decide when the urban growth boundary should be adjusted to add room for growth.
We want to make sure we get compact growth and not waste the land that people in the business of farming or forestry need. So we want to make sure that the land inside is used before you move the boundary out.
Under the supervision of Metro, the urban growth boundary has put a stop to sprawl. While the area's population has increased substantially, Portland has barely expanded into the countryside. It is estimated that 800,000 acres of farmland have been protected from development in the Willamette Valley where Portland resides. One farm that has been saved is Vicky Hurdle's, located 25 miles from downtown.
There's quite a few farms around Portland because we live in a valley that probably has some of the best soils in the United States. When we were commercial farmers, we would milk the cows and ship the milk. And we didn't know where it went. It could have gone out of state. We didn't know who was drinking it. And we grew wheat that maybe ended up in Asia. So we weren't very attached to our crops. And farming was just a job.
218, I was closer than you.
But now we're feeding people, we're making people happy, and we know those people. Hey, Claude, how are you?
Hey, what's up?
Just fine. And they tell us thank you daily.
I love it.
Mark your name off and...
Well, I'm picking up for 3 people today.
3?
Yeah.
I guess I'll trust you.
Thank you. Well, thanks again. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks.
Here, take your bag.
I like knowing where the food was grown, what it was grown with, that it didn't have pesticides, that it was grown naturally.
Ooh, can I have that? Yep. Which one? That one? Summer squash. It is.
I can come out to the farm and see them picking the food right before it goes in my bag. So I know exactly where it came from.
In the bag, too.
The food's great. I think that's the bonus for us.
You know what?
For city dwellers, the urban growth boundary guarantees that the countryside will be just a short drive from home.
We have the country, the forests, but we also have Portland, the city itself. It gives you the best of both worlds. I wouldn't want to change this.
That's a bean. You flung.
The urban growth boundary has also opened a new lucrative market for Vicki Hurdle and other farmers.
The manager of the Portland Farmers Market stopped by and says, could you bring a load of corn into Portland? And I told him, I have never driven a truck into Portland. I don't know if I can do that. He said, I'm sure you can. So the following Wednesday, we loaded my truck with corn and I went downtown. And I made it. There was my first day in Portland with a truck, and I sold that whole load of corn in less than an hour. And I went back the next week, and the next week, and the next week. Before then, I feared Portland and the people in it. But now they're all my friends.
Before the urban growth boundary existed, there was a time when farms like Vicki Hurdle's were in jeopardy. A time when Portland was like any other American city. In the 1950s and 60s, suburbs were springing up as Portland sprawled into the countryside. Oregon farmer Hector McPherson remembers this well.
I watched the development come down the roads. There were a number of small developments, just 2 or 3 houses, another one of a dozen houses, and they were coming this way.
Hector McPherson saw development coming out toward his dairy operation, and he decided to take a stand.
McPherson organized his fellow farmers to protect their land. A few years later, he was elected to the state Senate.
Now, what you find in the bill before you is, if not the best, then the least objectionable of the many ways it might be done.
And our idea, of course, wasn't to keep everybody else out. It was just to set the legitimate areas for farming and the legitimate areas for development, and keep those two separate enough that we could exist.
McPherson was soon joined by Oregon's new Republican governor, Tom McCall.
But there is a shameless threat in our environment and into the whole quality of our life, and that is the unfettered despoiling of our land. Sagebrush subdivisions, coastal condominium, and the ravenous rampage of suburbia all threaten to mark Oregon's status as the environmental model of this nation. We're dismayed that we have not stopped misuse of the land, which is our most valuable finite natural resource.
McCall and McPherson inspired Oregonians. Thousands joined grassroots groups to pressure the legislature to act. In 1973, Oregon became the first state in the nation to pass comprehensive land use legislation. Ordinary citizens had become a driving force in the planning of their state.
Well, I didn't start out to try and change Oregon. It grew way beyond the idea that I was trying to protect my little corner down here so that I could continue to farm.
This urban growth boundary really presents a wonderfully clear and crisp opportunity to think about what kind of life we're going to build for ourselves and how we can have our city life and also preserve the natural world around us in ways that aren't possible if we're just sprawling endlessly out into it.
While the idea of the urban growth boundary appears to be straightforward, managing it can be highly contentious. The small town of Cornelius sits on the western edge of Portland, amidst some of the most fertile farmland in America. With a population of 11,000, the community was growing rapidly and wanted to attract industry.
It was fairly explosive during the last decade and a half until we ran out of room.
We finally hit a point where we actually do need some more land. It's important that we have this land in order to raise income levels, to provide family wage jobs for people in Cornelius.
We are critically short of developable industrial land in the Portland metro region. The result is what is left tends to be more expensive. There's not much left on the lot to be able to offer new companies that want to locate or current businesses that need to expand here.
Sheldon Manufacturing was threatening to leave if it couldn't expand.
So if there are 10,000 people in Cornelius and we have 200 employees, 80% of our employees come from this area, it's a huge percentage of households that are represented here.
Cornelius petitioned the Metro Board to move the urban growth boundary in order to add more industrial land.
There's a need for 110 acres of buildable land. Timing is important, and there's considerable public and private investment at stake.
We need to establish a site that's shovel-ready. The urgency is being able to identify that site, and currently there is no site large enough in Cornelius to accommodate our growth.
For me, it boils down to, does Cornelius have a need? Yes, I believe that Cornelius has a need. I'm still a little bit unsure if it is the kind of need that qualifies through this process.
Of course, we support the idea of the urban growth boundary, which was institutionalized to be adjusted from time to time. And this is a tiny adjustment.
I think the city has made a case. I share my colleagues' concerns about precedent.
And that concludes the public hearing on this matter, and so now we'll go to council discussion, which means determining whether or not the application meets the criteria in the Metro Code for an expansion of the urban growth boundary. The floor is open to a motion.
I would move resolution number 08-3902, motion to deny.
When I heard their no, I went through all the feelings that you go through with a death.
Land use issues are almost inherently contentious and often very emotional because you're dealing with people's property and competing visions for the future.
Metro decided that bending the rules for one town could put the entire system at risk.
In Oregon, it's hard to move urban growth boundaries on purpose because we want to make sure that land is fully developed inside that boundary before it's moved.
I think our role is to look at what is going to make the region healthy as a whole. And that may mean sometimes going against local aspirations.
The precedent issue that was brought up by one of the counselors could have been a good precedent of an organization being flexible enough to handle the diversity in the region rather than a precedent for breaking of rules. It was procedure over substance.
Again and again, Metro faces tough choices. When should it stand firm, and when should it be flexible?
There's 200 jobs here right now. There could be 400. So it's frustrating. If we had to move, as dedicated as we are to our employees, I would recommend Washington. They present a very business-friendly attitude, and Oregon does not.
In Oregon, we like to think we know a lot about nature. A strong tree bends in the wind, or it would break. Our urban growth management system in Oregon has got to bend like the tree, or it could break. If the system ceases to be fair, then that's a failure that I don't think many Oregonians will even put up with.
The town of Cornelius, which is surrounded by some of the richest agricultural land on the planet, much less in Oregon, and farmers that butt up against Cornelius have been adamantly opposed to Cornelius expanding its urban growth boundary. The easiest way is to take a piece of flat agricultural ground and say, here it is, prime land next to a state highway, ready for development. The harder way is to put together an economic development strategy for Cornelius inside its existing limits and make it work.
Just outside the urban growth boundary, contention can turn to conflict.
You've been had. You have been had, and I'll tell you why.
Whoever drew that line, that's like playing God. All we're trying to do is maximize our value on our property.
Fred Netter is the kind of family farmer that the urban growth boundary is designed to protect. Yet he believes that he's the one making sacrifices for the benefit of city people.
When you look at the land use system that we have here, it still leaves discrepancy between what can be developed and what can't be developed. My farmland is only worth $6,000 to $8,000 an acre. The land next to me that was in the urban growth boundary was worth $100,000 an acre. That's what 30-some years of land use planning has done for us. And that's what it's all about. People should be able to sell their assets for as much as what they can get for them.
In a lot of ways, the debate in Oregon is a rural versus urban debate. And people in town like the fact that there's an invisible political line drawn around the city, and that people outside the city then can't do anything with their property.
In 2004, anger against the system led to revolt.
But we do live in America where we do have the chance to voice our opinions peacefully.
Advocates for property rights placed Measure 37 on the state ballot. Measure 37 promised to weaken Oregon's land use laws by letting many citizens develop their property as they saw fit, including land outside the urban growth boundary.
Measure 37 really came about as a result of years and years and years of what I call land abuse. That was a series of land use regulations that started in 1973 that systematically took away property owner rights to the point where people were fed up.
You have no idea how many acres of ground are tied up with this foolishness.
Dorothy English, 92 years old this week, became the poster girl for the ballot Measure 37 campaign.
I call it stealing. It isn't. They can give it all the fancy names they want, but it's stealing to me.
They, for Dorothy, includes Multnomah County and the State Land Conservation and Development Commission. She says their actions kept her and her late husband from developing the 40 acres they bought north of Skyline Road in 1952.
We could sell our farm at a much larger value under Measure 37. We could divide it up into some lots. We could probably double or triple the value of the farm.
Measure 37 really goes to the core of the philosophical debate between private property rights and the ability of a community, a city, a county to control its own development through regulations that it passes through a public process.
It wasn't the first time that Oregon's system had been challenged. 3 ballot initiatives had been tried before, and each had failed.
Starts now. KGW.com, we have your complete election results throughout the region.
This time, Measure 37 passed easily. Overnight, property owners from mom-and-pop farmers to large corporations lined up to develop thousands of acres.
Landowners have filed about 7,500 claims around the state. A claim filed for this pear orchard proposes dozens of homes.
It was hard for those of us who advocated for community planning by the people for the community to understand that we no longer were seen universally as the good guys, but were allied with a big government bureaucracy.
Portland had learned a lesson. Out of ballot measure 37, they were just sent reeling. It was very embarrassing for them to be the nirvana capital of planning in the country and then have the population turn on you and slap you around and say, no, you're not going to do this anymore.
Measure 37 was crafted so broadly that it would completely revolutionize land use in Oregon by stripping away all the protections we've carefully put in place over the years to make sure Oregon looks like Oregon.
The passage of Measure 37 stunned land use supporters. But they rallied, and 3 years later, placed their own initiative on the ballot, Measure 49.
There's one way to know for sure what Measure 49 will do. Read the ballot language. A yes vote modifies Measure 37, clarifies landowners.
Measure 49 is our last chance to prevent the large-scale damage that Measure 37 will do.
You all have come to try to change something that is a beautiful, non-renewable resource, our farmland. The Bill of Rights gives you the right to own private property.
That's right.
Every one of these rights has a limit. That limit is regulated by the zoning laws.
Are you supporting Measure 49? Oh, fantastic. I was calling not just to get your to gauge your support, but actually get you involved as a volunteer.
Land use supporters claimed that they had learned a lesson.
Can I count on you to vote yes on 49?
Yeah, you can.
All right.
It was time to compromise.
It became clear, slowly, that the job we had was to reconcile Oregonians' strong feelings about preventing government from hurting people. How do we demonstrate to folks we can have fairness and still have land use regulation?
Measure 49 would restore most of Oregon's land use restrictions, but it also contained a concession. Measure 49 would permit a small amount of development outside the urban growth boundary. But not everyone was buying their compromise.
If Measure 49 passes, there'll be another measure to take apart the land use laws. And it'll come from the grassroots again, like the Stop 49 movement is a grassroots movement. People who believe in the rights of private property.
It was coming down to a classic confrontation between the common good and individual rights.
The people who live in the Portland metro area see the rest of the state as their big giant park. When somebody drives from Portland to the beach, everything better look the same as the last time they drove to the beach.
It's not simply David versus Goliath, a small property owner against big oppressive government. It's all of us as a community deciding what our future is going to be.
Would Measure 49 restore the land use system, or would it go down in defeat? Many believe that a lot more than farmland was at stake.
We're 12 or 15 miles from downtown Portland, and we're in a place where the urban growth boundary is very clearly, visibly evident. The density of development has come right up to the edge, and then it stops, and on this side we have open space and agriculture. And by not sprawling out and just stretching out forever, we get a more compact form of development, and we get a more intense and vibrant urban life.
As Portland's population grows, the city can't take the easy way out and sprawl into the countryside. So Portland has to grow in a more compact, concentrated manner.
The value of the urban growth boundary is not reflected at the urban growth boundary itself or by pictures of farmland. The real value of the urban growth boundary is reflected by the revitalization of urban neighborhoods and the revitalization of downtown Portland.
Young people are coming here in great numbers
It's a safe place. It's exciting from the cultural point of view. There are a lot of people walking the streets in downtown at all hours. It's exciting from a business point of view. A nice mix of opportunity and realization. We were originally a 4,000 square foot store selling used books. Now we're a 70,000 square foot store. And that's been very much in conjunction with the growth of the central city. I mean, we can't do this without customers. Now there's over 400 businesses in the neighborhood that probably didn't have 20 in the 70s.
In places like the Pearl District, developers have renovated warehouses and other old buildings to entice people to live downtown.
This used to be a manufacturing building, the Crane Building. They just rejuvenated that into condos. The city had a vision. The people coming in are coming from all over the country.
The venerable Old Kennedy School has been converted into a hotel and popular gathering spot.
I'm really happy with the way this school has been restored and kept alive and kept from the wrecking ball.
Don't throw away your neighborhoods. Don't throw away your downtowns. You don't have to start over again in the suburbs. You can reuse what you have. You can make it viable.
By allowing farms to remain close to the city, the urban growth boundary has helped create a popular downtown farmers market.
The proximity of farms to the city, it's part of Portland's magic. Our land use planning is the reason why we have markets like this. This is kind of the big show in town.
Portland people seem to like to eat fresh and local. We've seen a lot more people coming here every week. It's a wonderful market and it's still growing.
Portland's comeback didn't happen by accident. Not long ago, its downtown was dying.
Our downtown was really typical of American cities in the 50s and 60s. We blew away a lot of great old buildings and built a lot of parking lots, and it was a pretty dismal place.
Portland was caught in a national trend as people and businesses abandoned the city for the suburbs. New highways were built to serve these suburbs, and in the process, the city gave up some of its most desirable real estate.
Portland built a multi-lane freeway right along the downtown waterfront. In the late 60s, there was discussion of maybe we should expand the expressway.
In 1969, city residents said enough and fought the freeway expansion. They not only stopped the construction, the residents convinced the city to tear up the freeway. In its place, a waterfront park was built.
It's taken us 30 years of concentrated effort to take Portland from a mediocre, traffic-choked downtown to one of the most livable places in the country. So you can do this in one person's lifetime.
A new era had begun. Citizens and political leaders joined together to remake Portland. Not around automobiles, but around people.
Oh, here's the bells. I think there's a train.
The goal was to design a city that works for people like Carrie Cobb and Solomon Collins.
It's an easy city to live in. Just the way the whole city is set up, it's really easy to get downtown. I mean, we're out in North Portland, but it takes about 22 minutes or so to get down into the downtown core or to get anywhere that we need to go for groceries or going to the doctor. And I think that that's what makes a city work. That's what makes our life work.
We have what we call 20-minute living.
And our thought on 20-minute living is we would like to concentrate on doing developments where within 20 minutes you can ride your bike, you can walk, or you can take alternative transportation to shop, work, play, and educate.
They gain independence because they don't have to find a place to park. They don't have to circle the block. They can get out of their car and get on a train and get off the train within blocks of where they want to be. I think that we can change how America moves.
As part of its transformation, Portland took a calculated but controversial risk. It diverted millions of dollars from highway construction to streetcars, light rail, and other public transit.
When we first planned the streetcar project, we had some nervousness from business people. But if this thing can really bring 5,000 or 10,000 people by my store every day without their car, that might be pretty good. And it's turned out to be very good.
The streetcars and light rail have had an impact. Businesses have returned, and downtown jobs have doubled since the 1970s.
We've done that by building streetcars and aerial trams and light rail to knit this all together and carry big volumes of people without their cars.
Residents are leaving behind their cars in other ways.
We have about 15,000 people coming over the bridge every morning on their bikes to work, and a whole lot more coming in from other parts of the city.
The new mindset is taking hold. Portland's transit usage has nearly doubled over the past decade. By relying less on the automobile, it is estimated that residents are saving over $1 billion every year in out-of-pocket transportation costs. There's another benefit.
Portland has reduced greenhouse gas emissions since 1990 by 14% per capita. And we think we're really the only place in the U.S. that's happened.
We're not driving 34 miles a day, and we'll have a smaller and smaller carbon footprint as a result.
Because of these reductions, Portland has been called the greenest city in America. But many feared that these gains could be lost if Measure 49 and Oregon's land use laws were to go down in defeat.
Bulldozers are already moving forward on Measure 37 claims. If we pass Measure 49 this November, we can stop most of this massive development.
What you see going on behind us is the coring out of the roadways. On top of this, we put in filter fabric, rock, and then asphalt. And what we're doing with it right now is putting 41 homes because of Measure 37 and its enactment. Most of the homes in here are going to be about 7,000 square feet and probably $2.5 to $2.7 million in price range.
Do we want to do this to our community? Do we want to cause this amount of development in order to help a particular subclass of people get more than $1 million? So I urge you to vote yes on 49 because I think it strikes the right balance between property rights and community interest.
There is one place that Measure 49 supporters are particularly afraid of losing.
There's an island called Sylvia Island. That would be subdivisions today if it weren't for the planning law. Now it's growing all this amazing spectrum of fruits and vegetables that we can grow in our climate and our region.
A short drive from downtown, Sylvia Island is a perfect example of how Portland's planning system has benefited urban dwellers by protecting beautiful countryside near the city.
You know, it's wonderful. The kids love it. It's beautiful. You know, everyone comes to pick berries and hang out with friends and picnic and music, and it's just one of these little magical places, I think, that exists.
A lot of families here, so.
Yeah. Tractors here.
Each unit kind of
is very individual.
To protect rural areas outside Portland, like Sauvie Island, planners are encouraging developers to build more compactly inside the city.
Means that we can have 7 units on a lot that our parents and we lived on with 1 unit.
The building of suburban-style homes on large parcels of property is discouraged. Instead, developers are encouraged to build upward or to create single-family row houses. Unlike the suburbs where communities are spread out, the idea is to create neighborhoods with easy access to nearby amenities. This concept is attracting people from the suburbs, like Tara and Jeff Mooney.
Let's go take a look at the unit.
Sounds good. We love the fact that we can walk to get groceries, we can walk to go get dinner, we can basically do everything on foot. Living down here, I'm a block from the gym. I go to the gym so much more now than I ever did in the suburbs. Such an easy way of life down here.
We grew up in the suburbs. The suburbs are crowded and...
Yeah, traffic.
Traffic's... I hate traffic.
Yeah, driving everywhere to go to get milk. You know, if we're out of milk, we just go down to the corner store any time of day.
We've exhausted the alternative of trying to live our lives behind the wheel of a car and burn half a gallon of gas to get half a gallon of milk. That isn't going to work anymore. I think most Americans understand that, and they're ready to invest in a much more wise and livable future.
Portland has decided to prevent sprawl, put up a limit and say, we're not going to grow ever wider and shallower. We're going to stay inside our boundaries and maybe grow deeper and more interesting.
Zoo Bomb is a weekly bike ride. We ride the train up to the zoo stop, and we take the train all the way to the top of the hill, and we hang out. The bike of choice is a little kid's bike, and then we ride down the hill. Then we catch the train and repeat it again 3-4 times a night. And bombing is riding down a hill really fast. Just a fun bike ride.
As measured by its vibrant downtown, Portland's revival is working. But not everyone is satisfied.
There's a certain number of people who get to impose their aesthetic preferences on others in disregard of those people's rights.
A few more minutes.
You want to live in a Portland downtown condo and go out to eat every night? It can work pretty well for you. There is a boutique market for that, but for a lot of other people, it's not working. Younger people with families, they don't find Portland very attractive. It's hard to find a house and a yard, so they go elsewhere.
Many families who want suburban homes on large lots leave for the suburb of Vancouver, Washington.
My husband and I started our family over in Southeast Portland. We wanted to stay in our old neighborhood where all our friends and our kids' friends were. We started looking over in Vancouver and found about twice the size of house for the same amount of money as what we would have found in Portland.
One of the criticisms people make about the urban growth boundary and planning is that it frustrates people who want to live the American dream, which they see as a big house and a big yard. That isn't what everybody wants. And increasingly, it's what a shrinking share of the population wants. Instead, what they want is they want to live in a vital neighborhood with transit where they can walk to stores, where their commute's short, that's an interesting place to live. And that is an important part of the American dream.
Not everyone living in the city feels that they're sharing in the benefits of the new Portland.
Some of us with very limited income are limited with where you can choose to live. We've had to move 3 times in the last 10 years. I'm seeing a lot of the rents going up. Definitely seems the further you are from downtown Portland, the more affordable the rent has become. you almost don't have a choice but to move further out. The further out you go, the more affordable housing is.
Novena Doherty used to live in the neighborhood of Alberta, a few miles from downtown.
Portland is a beautiful place to live. There are some beautiful neighborhoods.
Today, Novena can no longer afford to live in Alberta.
And I didn't know they put a Starbucks there. This whole area has changed majorly. I mean, that's a new store. That's new. I grew up with my best friend in this neighborhood for 24 years. And I know this street. I've hung out here. You know, things have changed so much just like within the last 5 to 6 years.
We've got gentrification in Portland, Oregon. And gentrification is this bittersweet thing. To see a neighborhood like Alberta start to be filled with restaurants that are regional draws, to see housing prices go up, boy, that's a good thing. But it's not a good thing for the people who are renting those houses before they became for sale. It's not a good thing when apartment units convert to condos.
As housing costs rise, the affordable neighborhoods are increasingly farther away from the city center.
It's not just an issue for the lowest income people in our community. This is a middle class issue. The teacher or the school bus driver, those are the kinds of folks who are middle class and now they are struggling too.
Last month, I got a notice stating they wanted to increase our rent another $100. So we're preparing to have to move again. On what? Putting my children through that. You know, it isn't something I'm looking forward to. I've got one going into high school, one who's getting ready to finish high school. I don't know where we're gonna move. I don't know where we can move.
If we become a boutique city where the core of our city has all these wonderful urban amenities, but it's affordable to only a very few, we've lost the battle.
Alarmed by stories like Novena's, Portland is supporting affordable housing with additional funding and other initiatives. The aim is to help low-income families stay in their neighborhoods.
A lot of the folks who we imagine will be living at Patton Park Apartments are squeezed out of the neighborhood, and many of them are moving out to the outer suburbs. And another one of the goals here is to try to fight that gentrification, to keep people here in the neighborhoods they grew up in.
As Portland struggles to make its city livable for everyone, the future of its land use system remains in doubt.
Those who support Measure 49 want to limit large development on Oregon's farms and forests. Opponents do not. They think they should be able to do whatever they want with their property at the expense of their neighbors, their community, and future generations.
That's not true either, especially since it's your county, Jeff, it seems.
In the final days of the election, debate over whether to restore or weaken Oregon's land use laws heated up.
When you read Measure 49 and you look through the 25 pages of complicated text, what you'll find are things that take away the rights of even the smallest of claimants to build.
If anybody working on this campaign isn't nervous, they don't know what they're doing. There's a lot of work to be done, a lot of contacts to be made, a lot of get out the vote calls to be phoned in. It's ours to lose.
Simply put, Measure 49 is our last chance to fix the imminent disaster set in place by the passage of Measure 37.
Knowing that land use issues would always be contentious, Portland's planners understood from the beginning that if their system were to work, everyone must have a voice.
One of the things that we've really been focused on is public safety, particularly for children walking to school.
The city essentially recognizes grassroots neighborhood organizations as legitimate participants in the city decision-making.
Are there any ideas to make this a dead end or anything? Because I live on this street right there.
People do feel that they're part of the system rather than being outsiders hammering on City Hall's doors to make something happen. And the relationship isn't always a smooth one.
I want to back up to the System Advisory Committee for a second.
Is there a representative from the motorist community?
Well, there certainly is a representative of the motorists. I'd say that pretty much everybody on the committee drives as well as bikes.
I'm talking about a specific representative, somebody that's, I'm here representing the motoring community. You are going to take over my streets with streetcars. I am here representing the motorist community, and I'm looking out for them.
3 people can do anything in this city, and 3 people can stop anything from happening. And sometimes that's a wonderful thing, and sometimes it's a source of frustration. But at heart, what it is, it's an empowerment of the citizen, and that is the ultimate strength of this community.
But how do you get everyone involved in the planning process?
You have to provide a lot of information, but do it in an accessible way. You need to bring in people who aren't always engaged in civic processes if you're going to build community support.
Bob made a motion.
Joining any association for the Latino community is always a challenge, and especially if they don't see that there's someone in there who can speak Spanish, or if they don't see faces similar to their faces. I realized that there wasn't a voice for the Latino community, and so I decided to step in and say, I'll start, and maybe people are going to follow.
The more we fail to involve people, the more likely we are to lose the confidence of a critical mass of people. So it's imperative, if we're going to keep and strengthen this land use planning system, that we do a great job of directly involving them in a planning process that affects their neighborhood, their town.
It says duplicate streetcar loop service.
Did you cast your vote? Election results are coming in.
And first Measure 49, which modifies Measure 37, it clarifies the right to build.
On November 6th, with their planning system at stake, Portland finally learned the results of the Measure 49 vote.
Now, from Cornview 6, this is live coverage of Campaign 07.
The other big issue tonight, Measure 49, which modifies Measure 37 property rights, did pass with 61% saying yes.
And tonight, Oregonians said, enough is enough. We're voting for our future.
On election night, when Measure 49 passed, I was at the party. I had staff and friends hugging, very happy that we had undone a really big mess and that we'd given Oregon and Oregon's planning program another chance.
Plenty of celebrating going on out here tonight at the Kennedy School at this Measure 49 party, a victory party for support.
Voters once again reaffirmed their support of Oregon's unique land use system. In many ways, the struggle over Measure 49 raises a question that can be asked in any battle over land use in America. How much should individuals be asked to sacrifice for the good of the community?
I feel like I've been disenfranchised by the people of my state. I feel like they are taking my rights away from me, and I believe that that is dead wrong. All I ask is that I have the rights to maximize my property when I sell it. That's all.
Well, I think what will happen is that we'll go for a year or two before the public realizes that Measure 49 doesn't work. And then we'll be right back to the same debate that we're having now, except it'll be the next ballot measure to fix Measure 49.
We've achieved a lot of things in the United States that are important through conflict. And in the case of Oregon's experience with land use, there's been a lot of conflict. And what we've accomplished reflects the commitment of tens of thousands of people. And they will rally to this program and have again and again when it's challenged, and they carry it forward.
For nearly 40 years, citizens have been determining the future of Portland. They have decided what they value most in their community and have enacted dramatic changes in order to preserve these values.
The battle between people who believe in the community having the power to plan its future and people who believe that that is too much of an intrusion on individuals and individual liberty, that battle, I think, will always be with us, and it'll be part of the pushing, pulling, and struggling that we need to do on a regular basis to ensure that a community is planning our future.
Out of this struggle, questions arise. Can other cities learn from Portland's experience of planning and managing growth? Or are Portland's residents really a breed apart from the rest of America?
People assume that Oregonians were different to begin with, and that's why it happened here. And that's not what I believe at all. I think at a key pivot point, we made some decisions.
This is the line right here that is intended to demarcate where urban levels of development can occur inside that line and where we're trying to protect farm and forest lands.
The Portland experiment is really an important step to make cities good, livable places. This is something that is important not only for Portland, but I think is globally important.
The citizens of Portland understood that their quest for a livable city would require a new way of thinking, and that the entire community would have to participate to attain the quality of life they wanted.
The most important thing that Oregon has to teach other places is not a physical example, and it's not a statute or a rule or a list of words, but it's an assumption that we all share here, that the future is something that we can shape together. It's not something that just happens to us. It's not the result of fate or good luck or bad luck. It's something that we shape by the choices that we make.